What's up guys, Ted from Immersion here, and I'm finally getting around to getting back into my DM's Guild reviews. I have a bunch of those on the docket, some from my own personal thoughts and collections of things that I want to do, as well as some that some lovely folks and creators on the DM's Guild and Twitter and other areas have reached out to me to send me. So we're going to be jumping all over the place in these. We're going to Eberron, back to the Sword Coast, modules, adventures, supplements, all that kind of stuff. And we're starting off today in Eberron with Sharn, the missing, I'm gonna say, I would read it as schema, right? It's short for schematic. And I will show you, this is from the Elven Tower, and they reached out to me on Twitter and asked if I would do a review of their modules. So I figured I would. It is a pay-to-play module, so keep that in mind. I'm not going to show you everything because I don't want to discourage your purchase of the product, but we're going to jump over here and we'll take a look right now at it here on the DM's Guild. So again, as with all of these videos, the links will be in the description below if you want to pick up a copy for yourself. And you can see here that there is multiple things you get. First of all, you get the document, you get the printer-friendly version in black and white, and you get the maps and props in a zip file, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. And you get, it says Sharn 2 Council of Roaches. I haven't read through it completely, but I do have it, and it is a 13-page document, so I'm not sure if it's a continuation of that, and you're just giving it for free, or how that works. So, but I will also say there is a preview product that you can download, so if you want to check out more and you don't love my review of it, you want to check it out for yourself, but are on the fence about purchasing it, you can do that. And you can see out of 9 ratings, it has 4 stars. So that's pretty good considering DM's Guild products, I feel, don't get reviewed as often as other things do in general. But let's read what we have here. So this is an introductory adventure to Eberron and Sharn. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Eberron or Sharn, this is probably going to seem a little off-putting to you, but I would recommend checking out the Wayfarer's Guide to Eberron here on the DM's Guild. That may help you, or look back into old 3.5 resources. There's the Eberron campaign setting from 3.5. I think there's an Eberron campaign setting from 4E as well. But anyway, written for 3 to 6 characters of levels 1 to 5. This adventure showcases the versatility of urban adventures in Sharn. The adventure takes a party of characters from the lowest and more dangerous parts of the city, the lower wards and the depths, to the highest and most exclusive neighborhoods and the upper wards and the Skyway. This adventure has it all. There are role-playing opportunities, underground exploration, interesting NPCs, a flying chase scene on flying vessels, and a big bad evil guy with enough charisma to captivate any player. That's what's included, or this is what's included: the adventure, printer-friendly PDF, map files, Roll20 compatible maps, and detailed maps of Sharn of every ward. You can kind of see here a little preview of the different maps and the overall layout of the city of Sharn, aka the city of towers. So you can see basically just in this, and we'll get into a little closer map when I dive into the module itself, but here's the depths and things, and you can see you work your way up to the Skyway. And again, for people unaware, Sharn is a very vertical city, and you can see there are broken out maps left and right here showing you different things. Here's a little layout of the way the pages work. We get a lot of nice yellow text breaking out what you need to read out loud as the DM, stat blocks, and a bunch of maps, and we'll go into those in a little bit. Let us dive in right now. So here we have it. It is a 52-page document. It's $4.95 to purchase it yourself, so keep that in mind, but you do get a lot of stuff here. So if we scroll down, so it's for levels 1 to 5. Now, I didn't do the math on my way through this document to see if you start at level 1, where you'll end up. It's written with encounters that can be scaled up or down based on the power level of your party and the party level. So I believe, from reading through this, that you would gain experience as you would in any other type of adventure. So it's not really set up to do milestones, although I'm sure you could if you wanted to tie them to the end of each chapter, but I didn't do the math to see what level a party of 4 or 5 people would be at if they encountered every encounter as written. Perhaps we can get some feedback from the Elven Tower in the comments below. So, there is a little bit of an introduction for those of you unfamiliar with Eberron, which is good because it's relatively new, I'd say, to 5th edition, and 5th edition folks are pretty much used to... Honestly, the way I see the world in 5th edition is you're either used to the Sword Coast, because that's what Wizards of the Coast is used to putting out, and that's everything they've done thus far, with the exception of the little bit of Eberron is all Sword Coast, or they're familiar with Critical Role and that campaign setting, because it's just got the visibility. So, 3 to 6 1st to 5th level adventurers is optimized for 5 1st level adventurers. So when you run into an encounter as written, it's designed for a party of 5 1st level adventurers. So keep that in mind when it comes to scaling as you'll make your way through. And then again, there's a section about adjusting the encounter. And then, see, here you go, new to Eberron. The slogan of the setting is, if it exists in D&D, it has a place in Eberron. And that is true. And if you read through some of the other documents, you'll definitely see that, like, Eberron is high magic, it's steampunk, it's airships, there's guns, artificers, fantasy magic, necromancy. It's all of this stuff has a place and has lore and things based around it. So there's a lot to check into. So I would recommend looking at it. And kind of goes on to check out the Wayfarer's Guide to Eberron, and there are smart links here. And then also says to look for the campaign settings from previous editions as well. A little primer on Warforged. Warforged play a large part in this adventure, but they also play a large part in Eberron in general. If you don't know what a Warforged is, I won't belabor it too much, but a Warforged is a sentient mechanical creature lacking gender. They were created for some reason, and I guess originally they were tools of war, and they basically gain sentience and they think for themselves, and they are actually an option as a playable race if you download the Wayfarer's Guide to Eberron. So, but you know, they can still, at least I'm not sure how the 5th edition version of it works. I'd have to go back and look, but you know, they can cast magic, they can, you know, heal and things like that. They're not true robots, although in older editions healing was half as effective on them because they weren't organic. But Warforged uses the they pronoun in this module. The DM, you are free to use this form of speech. So a little bit about what you should do as the DM before you run this adventure. And then I really like this section here, playing the Dungeon Master. And has a couple of guidelines, and this is obviously pertinent to this adventure, but pertinent to any adventure you run as a Dungeon Master. So I would recommend just hearing me out as I read through these if you're running any games, and see what you think. You have the power. You make the decisions about the adventure progress and how the group interacts with the NPCs, creatures, and settings elements. You are encouraged to improvise and change things. Each group is different, and they will all have different needs and things they enjoy and things they don't like. Again, as with any adventure, in my personal opinion, pre-written or not, adapt it to your players, because if they don't like X and the adventure has a chunk of that, alter it and shift it to make it fit with what they want. Give them a good challenge. You are the judge of the group's experience. Give them a well-balanced challenge to keep them engaged. A good challenge does not necessarily mean a combat situation. Try to feel out what your group is more interested in, and try to give them what they crave. A role-playing situation like a tough negotiation, an interrogation, or calling a favor may be intense as a full-blown battle. And this last one I think is one of the more important ones, especially for you new guys out there that are DMing. Don't stall. Right? If the game starts to slow down because players aren't able or unsure what to do, feel free to provide hints, clues, or a helping NPC. Players can get frustrated if they're unable to react to the adventure due to the lack of necessary information. Hints and clues may present themselves as ideas or thoughts the characters have. Another method is to introduce an NPC who will provide a suggestion to the characters directly. So this is just, again, I don't want to go into D&D, DMing 101 kind of a stuff here, but don't let the adventure stall because the party can't find the one piece of information. Try to keep things moving that keeps people engaged, and that I find more often than not, if you set up an adventure or a game type where people are not engaged, and they kind of they'll likely remember it as more of a negative experience, and remember the fact that they sat around trying to find information and never got anywhere, than the fact that there was other cool parts that happened later that may be a sticking point and it may not lead to future games. Recommended to start with first level characters. Again, use the Wayfarer's Guide to Eberron if you have it, or you can use the Unearthed Arcana Eberron races, because that did have all of the Eberron races, but this will have more background information. And then, let's see. One more thing before starting the game. Ask the group why they're together and acting as a team. Each group may choose one or two more of the following options. Childhood friends, one saved another one's life, one owes another one money. They share a dragon mark, which is an Eberron-related thing. They're employed by one of the major houses as mercenaries. Characters of the same race are relatives. Two characters escaped from an enemy faction together. It says it's not exhaustive, but basically to get your players thinking, because this is an adventure where it just makes more sense if the party is together in a cohesive group, so you don't have to deal with that awkward, oh hey, I just met you, we should go adventuring now, which has its place in certain adventures. This particular module, it's easier to assume that the party knows each other. And then it has some additional options about rest and healing. And here has an option of short rests are reduced to 5 minutes and long rests to an hour, as Sharn is a place of action and a faster-paced setting. And that's based on the epic heroism rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide, but that's up to you guys. I'd probably keep it as it is, but you play it by ear. Talks about the format of the adventure. Only monsters from the monster manual are used, plus the new ones that are referenced and created as part of this document. Things to remember are in bold, spells are in italicized, and yellow boxes are DM narrative text. So then we have our little primer here. So I can read you a little bit about the background. So Garthan Dela is a respected professor at Morgrave University, the most important institution of higher learning in Sharn. His work for the last 20 years is based on interpreting ancient knowledge from the Giant Era. He often buys relics and artifacts from Zendrick prospectors. One of his scouts recently unearthed an old map of Sharn's foundations. Professor Dela cross-referenced it with other documents, and with the use of some scrying spells, determined there was an ancient schema hidden there. And they talk about how they are the Wayfarer's Guide to Eberron, but these are basically, if you recall, in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, there's a section, even in the Dungeon Master's Guide, you can craft magical items, but you need to have the formula to do so. And that's basically what these are, blueprints to create something magical, whether it's an effect or an artifact or whatever. So basically, this professor has the ability to translate those and is hoping to get that information. This is an old one, so it should be powerful, and he cannot retrieve it without help. So he's placed a bounty on it, and that's basically where the party is going to come in and trying to get that. We have some people of importance here, but I'm not going to go through that too much because I don't want to spoil it. We can see the adventure is detailed into 4 major parts. There's a couple of adventure hooks here as ways to further engage your party in the overall story. Looking for work, the adventurers begin hanging out at house. I still never know how to pronounce this, so I'm going to call it Deneath. Fortified Enclave in the Copper Archward in Upper Tavik's Landing. They are not registered members of the Mercenary House, only mercenaries for hire. For this, they can lodge there as long as they keep taking bounties. They follow Professor Dela's bounty and meet him at the office. I have contacts. One human adventurer takes the Dela last name. The adventure begins with the adventurers in Sharn. They're looking for work. The characters took rooms at the Golden Hilt in the Tavern District. And basically is the nephew of the professor, and that's why they want to help out. Or the characters are basically mercenaries and they're just there for the bounty. Obviously, you can make up your own adventure hooks or use these as necessary. So part 1 the bounty, and it says, the adventurers meet a local university professor who is looking for a group of adventurers to retrieve a relic from the city's closed-up foundations. And then read the following text, and you can see we've got a big chunk of narrative. But basically, I want to say that I really like this adventure because, again, it is very Eberron and Sharn specific, but a lot of this you could use in any adventure, and anything urban or city-based. Again, the nature of Sharn allows lots of different landscapes and verticality, and you can maybe tweak some of that, but because of, again, the kind of steampunky and the nature of Eberron, this has a very pulp feel to it. It could be run if you set the scene in such a way, in a very noir kind of setting, I feel. That's the kind of vibe I get. Especially this first part, because this is mostly intros, some research, and diplomacy up front. So that's pretty cool. And then there's this little bit about Sharn. And you can see here is one of the props we mentioned before. So this is the bounty contract. A client has requested House Deneth's services in exchange for gold to represent House Deneth's interests and values. And to collect the bounty, present yourself to Professor Garthen Dela, office in Crystal Bridge Ward, Upper North Edge. So this is something you could, if you download the zip and print it out, print this physically thing out and give it to your players rather than just reading it aloud. Here's a Sharn Sky Coach, is basically an airship that would be up in the upper sections of the city. We have some information about role-playing various people. And then here you can kind of see, here's a map of the sewers and the laboratory where you hopefully will be able to find said schema. And then here's a quick breakdown north to, or basically top to bottom of Sharn, from the lava pools and the cogs in the lower part of the city to the Skyway in the upper area. And then second part is Sharn's foundations. We'll explore the sewers and locate House Cannith's old laboratory. And basically this is where you start into the adventure. You're going through this map, trying to find your way to where you need to go. And obviously you'll encounter some things along the way, some NPCs and new types of enemies based in Eberron, using the things you'll find in Wayfarer's Guide to Eberron, using the races, but there will be more contained at the end. You can also see here horrid rats. That's a new enemy type contained at the end, and then you can see the different levels to adjust accordingly. And then here's some nice maps of the laboratory itself. There is treasure and things sprinkled throughout, and there is some unique magic items as well. We'll get to those later on. Some history of the blueprints themselves, more encounters, what the schema is about. Then there's the flying chase. So then there's also a chase scene, and this is one that takes place in the air using different types of magical transportation that flies. And as such, chases are also always a fun thing to do in Dungeons and Dragons, in my opinion, if you can do it right. This takes it to the next level and has it happen in the sky on various different air-based vehicles. So, after delivering the schema to Professor Dela, the adventurers witness a group of thieves steal it from the professor's office. So, you can see here, there's some art of the chase, right? We've got these guys flying on these, the Emerald, what the hell are they? I think it's like the Clan of the Emerald Claw, and we'll talk about it because it comes up later. But basically, skyships and then fight, soar sleds, that's what they're called. And you're on the Skyraft, and it's Emerald Claw captains, yeah. So there's no maps, obviously, because this takes place kind of in your head, in the sky. But there is some information here about describing the chase, and then there's a whole section about falling because of, again, as I described, the massive verticality of the city of Sharn. Falling is not a good day for anybody, enemy or player alike. And some information about airstrikes and ways to shake up that combat as well. We have the warehouse. After pursuing the agents of the Order of the Emerald Claw to Skyway, the adventurers follow the flying coaches to a private warehouse. Obviously, we can see here's the skyship, and here's the map for that. What I do like here is in the storage room, there's a thing where you can get treasure, And it has an encounter table here, or not encounter table, a loot table, basically, of 1 through 12, where you roll a 2d6 and consult the table. Wait a minute. Roll 2d6 3 separate times. So it's interesting. A little oversight, I guess. 2d6 and consult the following table. That means you can never get 1, because you're rolling 2d6. So you'll never be able to get those 1d2 healing potions. The lowest you can ever get is 2. But you can see there is a cool amount of things here, from dragon shards to different art pieces to a +1 short sword. And some diamonds, which are useful for you clerics out there, or paladins. So again, some more encounters, more treasure, and then we get to the end of the conclusion of the adventure. What happens to the different characters, and we'll roll into the NPCs. So there is that big bad evil guy at the end, and this actually has a pretty cool option where you could choose to join the bad guy, and then that changes the whole course of the adventure. Obviously, if you're going to do that, this makes sense to make this an introduction to an Eberron campaign that continues, not just like a one-shot, because that you won't really get the payout of that. Again, if you're running it as a one-shot and the players choose to side with the villain, there's also no big bad evil guy and epic encounter at the end. They just join the bad guy, and the adventure ends. Not an oversight of this adventure, just something to keep in mind if you're running the game, and also plan to make it as a one-shot. It won't have that true satisfying ending of beating the big bad guy. I mean, you could make up an NPC to be the bad guy, but that's how it's written. So it works better if it rolls into, in my opinion, into a longer campaign if you end it that way. But again, you can't control what your players do. So we can see here some agents of the Emerald Claws. These are basically beefed up cultists. And then we have kind of our big bad here. We have a Warforged that we'll encounter, a Clockwork Shadow, which is a little construct creature. Has some neat abilities, but no actual attacks. So all it can do is help its creator, but granting them advantage is pretty sweet. Here's our Horrid Rats, right? So they're immune to acid and immune to charm. Animal channeling checks against them are at disadvantage, and they have pack tactics, and they deal acid damage on their bite. And then we have the cool Homunculus creature here, which is basically a Warforged Homunculus. Has a decent blade arm damage, but then has all the cool stuff that Warforged have. A bunch of resistances, as bonus action, it can recover hit points and gain AC. Then we can see our maps here, right? A nice overhead map of Sharn. And then we can go through, you can see again, we have our layout here, the cogs, the lower wards, the middle wards, the upper wards, the Skyway. You can see that here. We have our couple of handouts and maps that dive in a little bit closer. Here's our props. And then we have our magic items. I'll give you guys one magic item right off the bat here. And that's it. So you guys have to figure out what the other ones are. The Ring of Displacement. While wearing this ring, you can cast the Misty Step spell from it as an action twice per day. I would reword that personally, because the Misty Step spell is a bonus action. So that reads that you can use Misty Step, but it's an action to use it to cast a bonus action spell, unless it's specifically designed to be an action. So you could bonus action Misty Step and then use your action to Misty Step, because you can't use your action to do a bonus action thing. This would technically break that idea, but I'm wondering if that's just an oversight. Twice per day, or twice per long rest. That does require attunement, but a cool item nonetheless. And then lastly, a thank you from the Elven Tower. When I learned to play Dungeons & Dragons so many years ago, I came across the Eberron campaign setting in 3.5. The book enthralled me. We played Eberron campaigns for 12 years. I played all those awesome games with my relatives and close friends. Some people left and others joined, but I treasure all those memories the same. Eberron means a lot to me. It has a place in my heart. I was serious about all of my RPG creations, but this was also a labor of love. I love the setting and rejoice with the ability to create content for others to use. I trust that you can see in these pages the love and care that I have for Eberron. and there is more to come because this is the first installment of a trilogy of loosely related Sharn adventures. If you're interested in my work, here are some links to some other products at the DM's Guild. Most of my stuff there is cartography, but I have another adventure too. So you can see here Sword Coast resources for the DM's Guild. Here's maps, other fantastical maps. We have the Goblet of Fireflies, an adventure for 5th to 9th level characters. And lastly, one more thing. Most people know me for my cartography work. I create a number of RPG-related illustrations every month, and I also write adventure lore and campaign ideas for most of them. If you're interested in this sort of thing, please visit my Patreon page to see what all the fuss is about. Until the next one, the Elven Tower. So, again, guys, I'll have a link in the description for this if you'd like to pick it up yourself. It's $4.95. You can also see the other products by the Elven Tower here and click to check them out yourself. You can also download the preview to get a closer look at some things that I just sort of glanced over to provide you guys the information. This is a 25-minute video on a DM's Guild Spotlight, and I didn't read through the entire document with you, so I don't want to keep you guys here too much longer. But let me know what you think in the comments below. I will be sure to forward them to the Elven Tower, or at least let them know. Obviously, this video comes out. They'll be tagged in it. But if you have thoughts, comments, questions, concerns about the module, leave them in the comments below. I think it's pretty cool. Like I said, it's an urban kind of pulp adventure. You've got that cool intrigue, diplomacy side of things. You obviously have the chance for several combat encounters with some cool, unique enemies that your players may not know if they're unfamiliar with Eberron, or it'll be a nice Easter egg for them if they are. You have a sky-based chase scene. That's awesome. A couple new magic items, as well as some other more standard magic items contained within the adventure, like we saw that +1 short sword. And again, I don't always, with any of these things you find on the DM's Guild and anything I review, don't get yourself so caught up in the idea that it's only for Faerun and the Forgotten Realms and the Sword Coast, or only for Eberron. You can take these into this and from Sharn and bring it into Waterdeep, or take this and bring it into your own homebrew campaign. Maybe you also have a vertical city that's similar to Sharn and you use this concept. Maybe you don't, and you just sort of bi-level things with different wards, and maybe it's not a sky chase and it's a ground chase, and you have to think of other ways to adapt what's written. But I like it. It's clearly a passion project, and I'm a huge fan of Eberron myself. I never got a chance to play in an Eberron campaign, which was a real bummer for me because I loved the lore and I loved everything that I read about it. I did, when I was running 3.5 games, I did bring Eberron into kind of I had a homebrew world that I sort of made up loosely based on Greyhawk, but I brought everything in Eberron and Forgotten Realms. So anyway, that's it, guys, for me. Be sure to check back here because I'll be doing more DM's Guild Spotlight videos for a lot of other cool stuff, including, hopefully, the second set and third set of adventures in the Sharn series. So, at least from the Elven Tower, anyway. I'll see you next time.